Now, as Ron Bogle will tell you, great buildings make a difference. They can change the way people live, they can inspire us, and they can even build new facets to the economy. I'd like to introduce you now then to a man who knows this because he helped make one of these great buildings happen. Mississauga's iconic Maryland building, now known around the world. Would you please welcome Ed Sajecki, the Commissioner in Planning and Development for the City of Mississauga. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. It's indeed a pleasure to be here, and especially wonderful to be introduced by David Crombie. You know, when I come to events like this, I always bring reinforcements with me. I'm with another Crombie, one of our city councillors, actually. Bonnie Crombie is here as well. And earlier, her husband, Brian Crombie, was here, who is involved in organizing a summit, which is happening next week in Mississauga, that's involving Brampton and Oakville and others within the region. And the reason I'm mentioning that is just to put Mississauga a little bit in context. And if we do look at the Western GTA, we're currently about 750,000 people, and we have about another 420,000 jobs within our city. We are the sixth largest municipality in Canada. But if you do add in the others that I mentioned within the Western GTA, that's about 1.5 million people, which would make us the third largest city in the country after Toronto and Montreal. But again, we're all part of this broader region. I've had the privilege of being Commissioner of Planning and Building for a couple of municipalities in Toronto in the past, Etobicoke and York, so I do know something about the urban system within Toronto. And I just found it fascinating to hear the earlier speakers, particularly on the first panel, when they talked about neighborhoods, they talked about connecting the dots, because that really is what it's all about. It is connecting neighborhoods with regional planning and connecting the dots. Before I get into setting some context about the Marilyn Monroe buildings and what they have done for our municipality, I should say we're also going to show a video. The owners of the buildings were unable to be here, the developers, but they have put together a video about the process, and it runs about 8 minutes, which means, and I'm going to now quote David Naylor. Yesterday we had an exciting time at our city council where the University of Toronto came out to announce a $100 million innovation centre at the University of Toronto at Mississauga campus. And the chair of our committee at Council General Committee said, the representatives from U of T would only have the 10-minute allotted time that's normally allotted to deputations, and they really did need more time. So David Naylor said, professors speak in 45-minute sound bites, but I will try. The other comment that he made, and he said it at the end, and this was after he was received very encouraging feedback from council that they would fund this particular project to the tune of $1 million a year, which would be $10 million over a 10-year period, which is a lot of money for the city. That's a third of a point on our tax rate year by year over the next 10 years. He talked about the city council's clarity of vision, and he said the clarity of vision is uplifting. I'm saying that just simply because when I give you some context before we talk about the Maryland building, I think it really is important and ties to the earlier comments today about you have to have a vision, but you also have to have, perhaps even more importantly, brilliant implementation. And I think we're at a point now where, certainly in Mississauga, we're focusing on implementation because we've been working for a long while with our citizens on developing that vision. Well, I just heard that. You also have to have a hazel. I can tell you that part of the reason Councillor Crombie is here today is, I'm sure, that's probably at Mayor Hazel's orders to make sure that I say the right thing. So I know they will be reporting back on me, so I hopefully I can. She's already twittering, I think. I think the mayor. I'm just going to read very briefly from this was in the documentation that was presented by the president of the University of Toronto yesterday at our city council, and they actually talk about the Marilyn Monroe buildings within this document. But let me just read this out. With a remarkably cosmopolitan population, the city of Mississauga is destined to thrive in an increasingly borderless world. Recently ranked 4th among large North American cities of the future, Mississauga is widely recognized for its human capital, infrastructure, and economic potential. As part of the Greater Toronto Area, Mississauga contributes to a regional economy that generates 1/5 of Canada's GDP and nearly half of Ontario's GDP. the city's strengths in biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, information and communications technology, finance, insurance and real estate, automotive and aerospace, combined with its close proximity to the U.S. market, make Mississauga a natural magnet for talent and business development. So that's the baseline going forward. Going forward, our focus now is on getting the bones right, the skeletal framework that builds cities. It really is about city building. As you've probably read in the newspapers, we are looking at about a $1.6 billion project along Hurontario Street, which is our Hurontario light rail rapid transit line, which is more than just one line. It knits together a network tying in with 5 regional GO stations along Hurontario, 3 within Mississauga, when I include the downtown GO bus terminal, as well as 2 more up in Brampton. So for the first time, the city will be part of a regional transportation network, which does meet the objectives of creating a network that ties the region together. We have under construction a bus rapid transit line, which is scheduled to open, I think the first 4 stations are opening later this year. That runs in an east-west direction. The analogy I often like to use is think of Toronto without the Yonge Street line and think of Toronto without the Bloor line and the others that happened since. And think how the city might look very different if it wasn't for the transportation infrastructure that knit it together. Okay, enough about that. You are here to hear about Maryland. A stunning building. I mean, it is really a beacon now for the city of Mississauga in terms of what it's done in terms of reputation and what it's done certainly for our skyline. This building has been featured, I think, as recently as this past February in Architecture Digest magazine, which is viewed worldwide. You can go online and see about it. It won an award for the best new building for high-rise buildings out of an organization out of Chicago for the Americas. It's absolutely stunning, as you can tell. It's not only created a buzz and an excitement, but it's also in many ways put us on the map in terms of other attractions that are happening. The top left building, that is Sheridan College. That is phase 1 of a new campus where Sheridan College will be running a business school, and they are now talking to us about phase 2. In fact, they're out just tendering the project, which will mean we'll have about 6,000 students right in the heart of our downtown. So when we talk about our downtown, we do see it as being much more than residential, being a truly mixed community where education plays a huge role. The public realm, as you can see in the lower slide on the left side, that's our newly opened Celebration Square. We have a capacity of about 30,000 people within that square. That happens to be on Canada Day. And I can tell you, this past July 1st on Canada Day, we lucked into having Carly Rae Jepsen, who just won a whole bunch of Junos, and at that particular point in time, had probably the top song in the world. So I'm just telling you that because we got it right this time. We got her before she was famous and before we had to pay her a lot of money. A couple of years prior to that, we also had an opportunity, before our square was redone, to get a young fellow who wanted $3,000, but our people this is run by our community service department, said he was too expensive and he wasn't ready for main stage. This young gentleman comes from Stratford, Ontario. You can guess who it was. We turned down Justin Bieber. So Maryland shows a wow factor. There's absolutely no question about that. But one of the challenges we had, even with this building, and we did go through the developers went through an international design competition, was, architecture is about standing out, but urban design is about fitting in. So what would happen at the ground floor level? The city was pushing very much for excellent public realm and having a very active and animated ground floor level adjacent to Hurontario, which would be open for retail shopping and so forth. And so that has now happened. On the left side, this is an article that was in actually the Globe and Mail just last Friday. John Bentley Mays, Skylines That Excite the Imagination. And he was talking about the fact that, in fact, that what this building has done for Mississauga, as well as the fact that the Council for Tall Buildings, centered out of Chicago, has just opened a local chapter in Toronto, given the amount of high-rise development that is happening within the city. again, within the region, and you can see to the right, Mississauga is well positioned within the Greater Toronto, Greater Hamilton area, being in the city. David Crombie and I said, he and I are about the only ones who remember the term Golden Horseshoe, because we used to watch CHCH TV on Channel 11, and they always talked about the Golden Horseshoe. Then for a while things went quiet, but now we're back at it. It was said. I mean, others have said it. Montreal is coming to the Toronto region. That's another 3 million people over the next 30 years. We're growing at 100,000 a year. So to put it in another context, every 10 years we have to figure out how to accommodate a Calgary, and Edmonton, and after 30 years it's a Montreal. What does that mean? Apart from population, it also means 100 million square feet more of office space. Ian Dobson, who's done some work with the Canadian Urban Institute, has said one of the things that we need to do is figure out how we're going to organize all of these office parks in the future, because probably 90% of that 100 million square feet of office space is going to go somewhere in 905 region. So a lot of that new growth, in fact, the majority of the new growth, both population-wise and job-wise, is going to be out in 905. Yet we don't have any rapid transit yet. I mean, if we weren't in catch-up mode in terms of the amount of construction that's needed in Toronto, we would be doing what we really ought to be doing now, is getting on with building much, much more rapid transit in 905. We have a clear plan. It lays out nodes and corridors where growth should be occurring within Mississauga. This was all part of a roadmap for the city through our strategic plan, which hits on 5 pillars. Transportation being the move pillar, belong being what kind of neighborhoods and communities we're building, connect in terms of connecting up these neighborhoods to each other. Someone earlier talked about one of the key priorities obviously is the economy and jobs, and then of course doing the sustainable thing in terms of the environment with green and living green. We have a plan for the downtown which works within those parameters. And I have to tell you, it wasn't easy. Many people in this room helped us on the downtown plan. Joe Barrage helped us. Jennifer Kiesmat, who spoke earlier today, was involved in our strategic plan with our public engagement, where we engaged around 100,000 of our citizens through social media and meetings like this. Antonio Gomez Palacio, who's speaking, I think, tomorrow, or is moderating a panel, he actually coordinated the jury, which I was fortunate to be on, for the Marilyn Monroe building, that international design competition. So we've had a lot of help, and we're learning a lot. But the one thing we learned probably the most, and I'm going to look to David Crombie again, is in terms of implementing our Downtown 21 plan, we knew that we had to get it right with our fundamentals, our zoning bylaw, our site plan controls. So we actually put an interim control bylaw in place. And the reason I'm mentioning to David, that was, we believe, a defining moment for the city. We sent a message to owners in our downtown, very, very major players, by the way, that the status quo was no longer something we wanted to proceed. We were looking at some transformational, game-changing things. So just like David, in the early 70s, put in place a 45-foot height bylaw, which I think was transformational in terms of the kind of downtown we have in Toronto. I mean, it's phenomenal in terms of what it did. We did the same thing, and we're just now about to take the hold off. And I think we've resolved most of the issues in terms of how we move forward with our new downtown plan, and hopefully we can resolve that and without any OMB hearings. We're exploding in terms of the amount of development. Anybody who's been out near City Hall recently and has seen that, I mean, it's just quite phenomenal what has been happening. We are downtown in terms of residential development. We have about 40,000 people living there now. We'll double that easily, which will mean we'll be in line with downtown Vancouver. So finally, the excitement is here. We have a vision, a master plan. I think this is really just about connecting the dots, if I can quote an earlier speaker. So, yeah, these are exciting times. They're transformational times, and we're just pleased to be here, a part of this conference, and continue to learn. Now, I think at this point, because I'm looking at the timer here, we do want to show a short video.
So all the design came from imagination of human beings. So the building looked like organic life.
We are attracted as human beings by great design.
People are proud to live in a building that makes an architectural statement.
An architect is an artist. I think people enjoy the work of artists.
It's pretty obvious that people are into design.
Good design not only sells, but it sells at a premium in the marketplace. Well, we always knew that this parcel of land at the corner of Burnhamthorpe and 10 was an important intersection for the city.
The location is center ice within Mississauga. The developers had wanted to do something very special.
We felt that the highest and best use would be a residential building. And so one day I happened to be golfing with Ed Sajecki. I said, Ed, what about an international design competition?
And we were very excited when they said they were giving consideration to going to an international design competition. My staff fully embraced this idea.
I was excited about it. The staff was excited about it when we heard what Fernbrook and Citizen were going to do with an international contest.
It was an idea that took on a life of its own. None of us could have anticipated the response that it would receive, not only from the city of Mississauga, but globally.
Something new in architecture.
in Mississauga.
Il condominio dovrebbe diventare il simbolo.
通过这幅图想象一下我们今天请到的。
I like the Absolute for a couple of reasons. First of all, I like the way they did it. The fact that there was a competition. I've never heard of such a thing.
No one believed that a private sector company would ever do that, expose themselves in such a fashion. Not only did it bring this cross-section of designs from all over the world, it brought attention to the project on a global scale. And it wasn't long before we received well in excess of 600 registrations. And from there, we received 92 submissions.
We never expected to have such a result. We were overwhelmed.
And then it was left up to the jury to decide who the finalists were.
There was ultimately 6 that were shortlisted.
We kept the finalists under wraps up until the time of the presentation to the public, and we had a ceremony at BCE Place. The finalists were then presented to the public.
That same exhibit was basically taken on a bit of a road show.
And the public was asked to comment on what their favorites were.
When I attended the presentation, they were very unique, very different, and I wondered which one would be chosen. I remember one day we got an email, but when I opened, I saw congratulations. Mississauga has ambition to build a future. So I think the question is, what's the future city look like? In the high density urban context, we should introduce nature. So I was quite sure our tower shouldn't be another memorial or symbol for the strength or power. We should introduce this beautiful curve, the softness.
I think it is trying to connect with nature and to be at one with nature, the ebb and flow of life.
I like the way it changes as you move around it. The view is slightly different.
So the building looked like organic life.
When this one was chosen, I wondered, can it be built?
From the very beginning, there was a lot of doubt in the community as to whether or not this would ever get built.
I was extremely confident with our partners at Citizen and our construction crew at Dominus, and the consultants that we hired were number one.
But it was also important to have a local architect, and so we ended up pairing Yang Song Ma with a local firm.
Transfer into the lobby. It was my task to kind of bring it into the real world and to figure out, in conjunction with the structural engineer, how we're going to make it stand up.
In order to eliminate thermal grip, to isolate the balcony.
I wanted us to be true to the original design, and I made that very clear to the design team from the very start.
Consultants are an integral part of any project, but on this one in particular, because it was such a complicated building, there were daily meetings.
So we now had this great design, but we needed to sell the units.
The marketing team that we had assembled created the interest among the buyers. Mississauga had not seen something like this before, and they were ready for it.
I mean, it was a mad rush. I need to buy a unit in this building.
I mingled with the crowd prior to us opening the doors, and I've never felt that kind of buzz.
On the first weekend that we opened the sales office, we pretty much sold out the building. And so at that point, we decided that we were going to move quickly forward with the design of the next phase. And we sold that out in a matter of a couple of days as well.
Usually we spend 3 to 4 months before we start digging. I think we spent close to a year before we started digging with this project.
Obviously, structurally, that was the biggest challenge. Every floor was different.
Each level, every level, starting from ground floor to the 56th floor, basically it was building a floor by floor project, starting right from scratch, and every floor was always unique. And it wasn't only the structure, it was every discipline of construction had to deal with what was next. And have you dealt with the wall forms and the pipe space in this particular area here? Yeah. It's very innovative, and we had to be innovative on our side. Innovative in the techniques, the details, and taking out their thinking caps and dealing with every part of construction, from concrete to windows to kitchens to electrical, mechanical. Whenever there was a challenge, everybody got involved in it.
We got a lot of great response from the city.
There was a lot of toing and froing between my staff and the consultants and engineers.
With permits, construction details, engineering, they're also part of the team.
In hindsight, without that involvement and without that interest, again, projects like this won't happen.
Everyone worked together to make the building happen.
It very much is true to the architectural intent that Yan Sung Ma had when he first made his submission.
Many people thought we would fail, but here it is.
In your career, you only get, I think, probably only one time in your lifetime that you're going to build something like this, and it was something that we wanted to all do.
It's so wonderful that the private sector took the initiative.
I really would hope that other cities would now take a look at this and see what Hazel has been able to do with her collaboration with us.
The city's openness to zoning was a catalyst.
It allowed this creative expression to be entertained in a serious way by business.
The opportunity was rare, not only for me, but also for a city like Mississauga.
Modern architecture goes, one of the finest buildings in the world. I mean, and it's being acknowledged that way.
These buildings are helping to shape that image for Canada.
It absolutely is the most striking condo design that I've seen in my time at the Star.
Mississauga now has a skyline, and it's punctuated by these spectacular buildings.
And I think that shapes the image that we have abroad.
Everybody in our team is so proud of this program.
The outcome is worth every sleepless night.
We're hoping the building also can be a symbol for a future city.